morning and welcome to the 13th GREEN4SEA Athens. It's good to be back at the Lighthouse. The previous event after the pandemic was conducted in the Eugenides Foundation, a familiar venue for us. So we would like to welcome you all. We have a fully packed program today. For those of you who are not familiar with what we do with SAFETY4SEA, SAFETY4SEA is part of what we call SQ Group. We are providing a range of services. The majority of the services under SAFETY4SEA brand is provided for free, of course. Plus, we provide a number of services on a range of clients under the brand. Now, I'm sure you've seen the event schedule for 2024. All the events are back live after the pandemic, thank God. We are having this GREEN4SEA event in Athens today. We're going to having the first GREEN4SEA in Singapore during the Singapore Maritime Week within the month. And of course, we always say we would like to welcome you on one of our future events. The awards, all the awards have stayed virtual after the pandemic. The plan is to stay virtual for a number of reasons. We have the GREEN4SEA Awards on the 9th of May. For those of you who wish to participate in the award scheme, it's absolutely free. There's no commitment of any sort. So, and the nominations are open for the awards approximately 3 to 4 months ahead of the award ceremony. There's always announcements on the website. And as always, we're going to be attending all the major trade shows, meaning we attended CMA, we're going to be attending the Singapore Maritime Week, and of course the largest shows of the calendar for this year are going to be Posidonia here in Athens, and of course SMM in Hamburg. We're going to be the full week in Hamburg as well. Just let's say a brief announcement. We are running a SeaFit survey, and of course we are running a petition for the communication. For those of you who would like to participate in this petition, the target for us is to reach 100,000 signatures for the petition. It's going to be, the target for us is to reach this number by the Q3 approximately. So that's the idea. We're going to be in Manila, of course, the largest, let's say, stakeholder group who has an interest to the petition. For the communication is the seafarers. So this is something, and we announced the results of the barometer survey for the SeaFit for 2023 a number of days ago on the website. Now, the timeline, I'm sure you've seen the program. It's a full program. It's 6 panels. And as always, for those of you who wish to participate posting on social media, you can use the hashtag SAFETY4SEA or GREEN4SEA. And of course, the video of the presentations will be available online after the event. And as always, the calendar of the events and the events are updated on the website. There's always a 12-minute rule for the presentation, as usual. And the program is, we're starting at 9 a.m. We're going to be, by 5 p.m., we're going to be concluding the last panel. And there's a networking, a cocktail reception at the end. And those of you who would, let's say, exceed the 12 minutes are going to be reaching this slide. This is the thank you slide, the time's up. I think, given the training and the familiarization of the speakers with what we do, it's rarely seen. This slide is rarely seen in the latest events, I would say. So we're going to see how it goes. But I can assure you that we have to stay on track, and that applies to me as well. So I have a brief presentation, because no one else is talking about it, about the human factors in the decarbonization era. It's something we push under the SAFETY4SEA for a number of things recently. One of the major problems that the industry has is that we say we put the cart before the horse. This is graphically how you put the cart before the horse, because it's easy to say, but the visual representation, I think it's more meaningful, and this is not working. And the industry has to stick with a basic, equation, finding the right people, the right ships and the right systems. Otherwise, it's not working properly. So this is it. And given the importance and the significance, let's say, of the human factors, of the right people, it's always what amazes me that the industry is not paying attention. And the industry, of course, is based on 4 pillars of maritime compliance: STCW, MLC, MARPOL, SOLAS, etc. I would say it's heavily SOLAS dominated. MARPOL now is taking, let's say, its revenge over the course of the last, I would say, 10 years. But it's more, if you see the findings of the Port of Control, for example, maybe 80%, 75% is SOLAS related, not necessarily MARPOL, but SOLAS related. So this is where we stand as an industry. And the decarbonization era has a number of needs with respect to human factors. And this is an outline, I would say it's a nice outline of the needs of this era, starting with alternative fuel technologies. It could be gas, it could be new fuels, it could be other options such as biofuels, solar, wind, batteries, nuclear. I would say the most, I would say, spicy development with respect to nuclear is the so-called forthcoming introduction of NEMO. So the nuclear, let's say, industry is preparing to launch NEMO. NEMO stands for Nuclear Energy Maritime Organization. It's a nice name. It's PR-wise, it's 100% successful. So we're going to see more in the years to come with respect to all these other options. Of course, we're going to be discussing about gas and other new fuels. We have, of course, other needs in place for a number of reasons. We have new trade routes, we have NOx Tier 3, we have scrubbers, ballast water treatment, IHM. These are the things we do have in the agenda. We have automation needs, the so-called maritime autonomous surface ships, the must needs. There's an ongoing discussion and developments within the IMO and other regulatory bodies in the EU, and of course in Asia. And we have technology needs for a number of reasons. So we expect in a way that these seafarers are going to be something like, I would say, superheroes, something like that, which is amazing. They aren't. And to be honest here, I'm going to outline my reservation at the end of this, let's say, brief presentation. We expect them to have a number of skills. It could be personal skills, soft skills, multilingual skills, that stuff. We expect them to have operational skills, such as, for example, use of equipment, machinery, and so on and so forth. We expect them to have safety skills. Now we're talking about ammonia. We're talking about specifically ammonia, which is a very, I would say, safety-wise, hazardous topic. And we expect them to have digital skills, for example, for a number of reasons, automation skills and sustainability skills. We expect them to be superheroes in a way of. And of course, we have several challenges with regards to decarbonization. We're going to be discussing these challenges within the course of the day with a number of panelists. We have regime-related. The transition is expensive, maybe it's slowed down, uncertainty, there's a slow regulatory development. You've seen, we're going to be discussing the outcome of the latest MEPC. We have huge challenges with respect to maritime education and training institution needs. No one is, let's say, talking about it. We have the new STCW expected to be finalized by 2027. It's very slow. The development of the new STCW is extremely slow, and no one is talking about it. There's one committee coming into play, let's say, once a year to discuss these developments. And you see the outline of the developments, what we expect to happen with respect to the new STCW. It's very slow, I can assure you about that. And we have seafarer-related issues, such as, for example, that seafarers are staying less at sea now. And there's always challenges to attract new talent, the Gen Zers and so on. And there's always a shortage of experienced seafarers. And to be honest here, I would say the biggest challenge, if you speak with anyone who is operating dual fuel ships other than LNG carriers, the biggest challenge is to train their crews because they cannot find others. They cannot, let's say, find crew from others to, let's say, in brackets, steal them and get them ready. They have to train their own crews, and it's very challenging, if not impossible, because we are not talking about people who are familiar. If you take people who are working with LPG, they may be familiar working with gas. But if you're talking about, let's say, container ships, and this is the case, I can assure you about that. If we're talking about container ships and they operate, let's say, with conventional fuels, it's very challenging to train them how to use these dual fuel engines and so on and so forth. And these people at some point are going to be requesting additional compensation. We will be here, and we're going to see how will that play. And of course, we have the challenges of the Gen Zers, because it's how you learn. The Gen Zers are those who have been born between 1998 and 2010. We have an issue with the training, let's say, methods to be employed with this, let's say, younger generation. And we tend, as an industry, to forget that the way we learn, the way adults learn, is the model, the so-called model 70-20-10. We learn 10% from what we hear in a classroom, 20% from what we, let's say, learn speaking with colleagues, and 70% what we learn out of doing something. This is how adults learn, and we tend to forget that. 70% means doing. It's not about taking someone in a classroom, explaining them how dual fuel engines work. It's about taking them on a ship, operating a ship, and learn from their experiences. This is it. That's the challenge. So we have these Gen Zers, and we have these Gen Zers having a, let's say, very peculiar approach of how they learn. The psychologists, it's a joke I'm saying, it's not a joke, but it's real life. The psychologists are ready to, let's say, deliver their diplomas. This generation, the Gen Zers, can stay 3 years without having sex, and they cannot stay for 3 hours without internet. If you take a minute to reflect on that, it's amazing. What's happening with these Gen Zers, it's amazing. They have a totally, let's say, innovative, to put it in a politically correct, let's say, form, way of thinking, which is going to be very challenging for the rest of us. We've seen millennials, it took them maybe 5 to 10 additional years to get into play. Maybe this generation, it take 10 to 20 years. We'll see how it will go. It's very early stages, but this generation requires a totally innovative way of how to train them and how to approach them with the use of media and so on. So, my closing thoughts, because it's not about me, it's not about the human factors today. I'm just speaking on a topic that no one else will, let's say, most probably analyze or maybe take some additional time to discuss. We have the human factor, which is in our industry is not valued or it's totally underestimated. No one is talking about the issue of return on human capital. If you go to Google, if you go to other industries, there are studies analyzing a return on human capital. And the return in shipping is in the range of 20 to 30 or maybe more. It's good, it's not bad. But we've seen people talking about the financial aspects of it, wanting to exploit more. We'll see how that plays. We have market and society trends because there's a lot of uncertainty. Today versus before the pandemic, maybe versus 10 or 20 years ago. The decarbonization is very expensive. Everyone is talking about a number of ways to approach decarbonization. It's going to be costly, and it's not going to be costly for the ship manager or the charterer. It's going to be costly for the end user. Those who are taking the sneakers, that stuff. Those are the end users. So if it's going to be expensive for the end user, I'm always saying, reflect what happened last winter with a rise in the prices of Russian gas in the European market. All governments, without exception, came forward and provided means of, let's say, relief for the general public. This is what is going to happen if this at some point will go into play. It's not straightforward. It's not that easy to apply, let's say, some sort of mechanism on a global scale. So we're going to see how expensive these new human factors will cost, because we are talking about the discussion is heavily, dominated by the energy transition. We're talking about ESG, focusing on the environmental part. So, which is not necessarily sustainable. And of course, people are considered a cost center and not an asset, which is, I would say, one of the biggest challenges in our industry. So without people, we cannot have ships. And again, you have to reflect and just as a closing, let's say, thought, the upskilling, who will pay for the upskilling? And I think that's a question I'm always asking, and no one is willing to provide a sustainable answer. Just some thoughts on where we stand with respect to, humans. It is challenging, but I can assure you it will be more challenging in the years to come. There's no sort of study, either in the IMO level or in any other local, let's say national level, of providing information regarding how many years these people who, let's say, finish with the maritime academies stay with a career at sea. There's no study, I can assure you about that, on either national or international level. And yes, I can assure you that 75% of the global workforce is dominated by what we call the big three: Chinese, Indian, Filipinos. Each of these three nations have approximately 25% of the 2 million seafarers. These are the numbers. And let's say the other nationalities are, let's say, populating 27% of the market. Now, if you go to these three nationalities, the only out of three who are, let's say, professional seafarers, staying with a seafaring, let's say, profession till they retire, more or less, are the Filipinos. Indians and Chinese are not staying up to, let's say, retirement, sailing with the ships, and so on and so forth. So huge challenges. No one is talking about it. We are talking about how it will be done as an end result, and no one is discussing or maybe willing to debate where we're going to find the seafarers, how are we going to train them, and who will pay for this. So these are my, let's say, closing thoughts. I would like to thank you very much, and I would like to proceed as scheduled with the program. I would like to